The markets reward a new missile defense contract. Media outlets amplify the signal. This is the decoy. A multi-billion-dollar investment in high-cost symmetric defense for a war that will never be fought in that arena. The kinetic cost is a fiscal illusion. The real vector of attack is silent, and its theater of operations is the 99% of global data traffic, financial transactions, command and control, logistical data that flows through a handful of undersea fiber optic cables. Analysts at RUSI and CSIS have documented this systemic vulnerability for years. An adversary doesn't need to launch a missile. They need only sever a few key nodes to induce a systemic solvency crisis. Simultaneously, they are deploying assets to achieve temporary satellite blinding. Not destruction, denial. The blueprint is not to defeat the Leviathan. The blueprint is to blind it. A nation-state with unmatched kinetic power but no incoming data becomes a strategic liability. This is the Blind Leviathan Protocol, a system with launch-on-warning authority but no sensory input, radically lowering the threshold for escalation. The central question is not if adversaries will attack, but why. They choose these specific vectors. Why attack agriculture with seeds and weaponize failed states instead of engaging in kinetic warfare? The answer is not cowardice. It is a clinical calculation of solvency. A nation-state, like a corporation, can be forced into bankruptcy. It can run out of the economic and political capital required to sustain high-cost symmetric conflict. This is not theoretical. According to CSIS analysis, the Kremlin's war was not merely a military campaign. It was a catastrophic drain on domestic solvency. Facing unsustainable kinetic costs and crushing sanctions, the strategic pivot was a mathematical certainty. Weakness forced a shift from expensive conventional operations to a global portfolio of asymmetric attrition. They could no longer afford the fight, so they changed the fight. This pivot became the blueprint. Adversaries understand that forcing a competitor into a state of perpetual high-cost readiness is a form of economic siege. While America allocates billions to symmetric defenses, evidenced by contracts with firms like MDA Space for missile shields, source number 1, the real attack is not a hypersonic missile. It is a seed protocol, source number 2, a distributed, deniable, low-cost vector designed to achieve systemic attrition at pennies on the dollar. The ultimate motive is to engineer a solvency crisis. By creating compounding, non-military liabilities, from agricultural insecurity, source number 2, to managing the collapse of a regional oil giant like Venezuela, source number 4, the objective is to overwhelm the system. Each crisis acts as a targeted drain on economic and political liquidity. This is not about winning a battle. It's about making the cost of global leadership so unbearable that the target's own internal systems trigger a launch-on-warning response, making it a danger to itself. The economics of modern conflict are being rewritten. According to analysts at the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, the kinetic cost to neutralize a $5 million main battle tank is now as low as $500. This is not an accounting error. It is the mathematical leverage of asymmetric warfare. This economic inversion is termed the democratization of violence. The monopoly on delivering decisive force, once held by superpowers investing billions in platforms like the missile defense systems mentioned in MDA space contracts, has been broken. Now, non-state actors and rival powers can achieve strategic attrition with off-the-shelf technology. For every high-cost symmetric asset America fields, adversaries can deploy thousands of low-cost, deniable threats. The objective is not to win a single battle, but to bankrupt the defender. It is a calculated protocol to engineer a solvency crisis by forcing an unsustainable spending ratio on every tactical engagement. Systemic risk is not deployed. It is staged. Adversaries do not initiate a full-spectrum assault against a primary target without first calibrating the protocol in a controlled environment. These environments are the gray zones of the international system, regions where the rule of law is pliable and borders are porous. They function as proxy laboratories. Consider Venezuela. The narrative sold was a simple economic collapse. The data, however, details a controlled demolition. As documented by MSN, a nation possessing the world's largest oil reserves was systematically reduced to an economic liability. Reports from the Bulwark confirm this was not a strategic loss for entities like China. It was the perfection of a blueprint: how to weaponize a failed state, transforming it into a persistent, resource-draining migratory and criminal vector against a regional superpower. This staging is not confined to failed states. It occurs within Allied territory. While the U.S. Missile Defense Agency signs contracts with Canadian firms like MDA Space for symmetric, high kinetic cost defenses, a far cheaper, asymmetric protocol is staged through that very same territory. The SEED protocol, unsolicited, potentially compromised biological matter from China, was not exclusive to Texas. CSS confirms such vectors utilize integrated logistics networks of allied nations like Canada as a launch point, exploiting trusted corridors to target American agricultural solvency. The gray zone serves a single function: stress testing attrition models. Each protocol, from the weaponized liability of Venezuela to the agricultural vector staged via Canada, is a low-cost, deniable experiment. The mathematical certainty is that these proven asymmetric blueprints will be scaled and executed against the primary target. They are not designed to win a war. They are designed to engineer a solvency crisis, making the target nation's launch-on warning threshold for kinetic conflict dangerously low. The proxy laboratory's ultimate goal is to force the enemy to become its own executioner. The launch-on warning doctrine is not a contingency plan. It is a pre-calculated response protocol. It is the core logic underpinning multi-billion-dollar symmetric defense investments, such as contracts with firms like MDA Space, to counter a detected incoming nuclear strike before impact. Source number 1. The protocol's objective is absolute: neutralize an aggressor's first strike advantage through guaranteed retaliation. The asymmetric counter is not kinetic. It does not target the missile shield. It targets the data that feeds it. A strategic cyber attack vector, executed with precision, creates what RUSI analysts term the fog of digital war. The objective is to sever the link between sensor and commander, creating an information vacuum. This data vacuum triggers the dilemma. With early warning systems blinded, the command authority cannot distinguish between a network failure and the prelude to a decapitation strike. According to CSIS doctrine analysis, the protocol presents a zero-sum choice: wait for ground-based confirmation and risk systemic annihilation, or launch based on the catastrophic absence of information. This is the ultimate asymmetric leverage. The commander is not forced to launch out of panic, but out of protocol. The systemic fear of being disarmed dictates the action. The mathematical certainty is that the kinetic cost of inaction is perceived as infinite. The adversary has engineered a trap where our own defensive doctrine becomes the primary vector for self-initiated catastrophic escalation. The doctrinal error is a focus on symmetric deterrence. While the Missile Defense Agency awards contracts for high-altitude interceptors, as per MDA Space's recent filings, the adversary is not targeting the shield. They are targeting the economic solvency it protects. This isn't speculation. It's a blueprint. The next phase is not the primary attack. It is a calibration shot. The objective is to test the brittleness of U.S. logistical infrastructure and measure the political response vector. It must be an attribution impossible event, a strike that can be plausibly blamed on system failure or non-state actors, maximizing economic damage while minimizing the risk of kinetic reprisal. CSIS analysts have modeled this protocol. The highest leverage, lowest cost target is not the power grid, but the terminal operating system of a major deep water port. Within the next 12 months, expect a multi-day digital blackout at a critical West Coast container terminal, Los Angeles or Long Beach. The event will not be a hack. It will be a cascading data corruption event in the logistics software that coordinates crane, truck, and ship movements. The official narrative will be software failure or a low-level ransomware attempt. The reality is a test. It will measure how many days it takes for supply chains to seize, how long before the kinetic cost of inaction forces a federal response, and how effectively the media contains the narrative. This is the calibration for the solvency crisis.